Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And this is a missing person segment. Thanks for being here. It's very, very cold and snowy in Montana right now. So we're huddled up in the library, trying to stay warm. Got a very nice letter and gift. I'm going to read the letter to you. Hey Dave, Angie, and Huck. Thank you for your investigative work in documenting missing people in U.S., Canada, and other parts of the world. 2 years ago, when I first came across your videos, I recalled being so shocked, and still am, by the high number of missing persons recalled. And I was surprised to learn that 70,000 to 80,000 people are reported missing in Canada annually. In the U.S., there are approximately 600,000. Let me preface this for you. I hear these numbers all the time. Throw them out. Don't believe them. Here's why. Let's say you're a teenager. You run away from home. Parents call the police. They come. They take a report. It's a missing person report, that runaway. Teenager comes back a couple days later. A week later, they run away again. Police called again. That's case number 2. Every time they run away and come back, that's a case. Those numbers indicate total numbers of all these things. The actual cases that you need to worry about are about 0.1% of that total. The press uses that number completely wrong and tries to make it sound like, oh, there's this huge number. No, don't believe it. Not true. While the majority are found within the first week, there's still a 15 to 20% that are unresolved, still a mystery. No, not true. I find these numbers to be astounding. I can only imagine how extremely hard and painful they are. Enclosed is a small gift for Huck. As associate producer, I thought she would appreciate a bandana on those chilly days. I try to support as many local Canadian and American businesses as I can. Puppy Riot Designs is a small business located in Nova Scotia, and the bandana is awesome. It says Huck on it. She was wearing it around real proud. I read 2 of your books, enjoy the Bigfoot classes, and look forward to watching Missing 411 UFO Connection in December. I wouldn't pay much attention to the critics regarding mental illness because there are thousands more who appreciate and respect your dedication and research. Your words are spoken from the heart. You are as honest and real as it gets. It affects everyone, and we cannot sweep this under the carpet because it's uncomfortable, so thank you for raising the awareness. Well, thank you. So during the last month, we take this movie and we send out what's called screeners to important people in the industry and have them watch the movie. And it's a, maybe they'll book an interview, maybe they'll write something in the press, maybe they'll, send their friends to go see it. Well, today I just got a huge vote of confidence from somebody big in this industry. And I won't tell you what they said, but it blew me away. And it was all positive. So things are going good with Missing 411, the UFO Connection. I'll get the poster. So let's start with the letters. Hey, hi Dave. I work closely with the law enforcement community as a lead nurse in a local county detention center. Let me explain what this is. Every county has a jail. They call it a detention center. It's called a jail. And every medium-sized jail, large jail, has at least one nurse. Sometimes they have a couple nurses. And they're the ones that distribute the medications and pharmaceuticals, etc. And they're also the ones that clear prisoners that come into the jail. It's a never-ending job for them. And most of the people in there don't respect them. It's a hard job. You, sir, touch on a subject that I believe is very misunderstood in our law enforcement community and perhaps society as a whole. That is the subject of mental health. Our Department of Corrections has become a dumping ground for the mentally ill and demented. Every detention center in which I have served has mentally ill, mentally handicapped, and demented people in their custody. A lot of times these inmates are incarcerated because of progression of their disease or decompensation of a psychiatric disorder. I could talk to you for hours about all the sad cases that I've been faced with in the Department of Corrections. A severely mentally handicapped individual unable to care for himself, wandering alone in the streets, arrested and incarcerated for trespassing. To this day, he does not understand what he has done or why he is being held. He does not even speak. Another one is a severely mentally handicapped individual who rocks back and forth all day and cries. Arrested because she didn't understand that the guy at the store really wasn't her boyfriend and didn't want her coming around. Another one with bipolar schizophrenia in a state of psychosis failed to stop for a blue light. He wasn't brought to jail where he decompensated to the point of being more animal-like than human. He operated on a fight or flight instinct. Unfortunately, some officers didn't understand that he only showed aggression when he was afraid. He was naked because he would always tear off his jumpsuit, afraid, lost weight, played in his own waist, and ate it. For 3 years, he sat in a cell while waiting a bed at a forensic psych hospital. Glad to report that presently he is living in a group home doing well. Yet another inmate is an elderly lady, obviously with dementia, recent stroke, which was apparently not even addressed medically, and a history of bipolar schizophrenia. She was unable to take care of herself or her hygiene. She was living with her caretaker, her sister, and became aggressive, which is not unusual with patients with dementia. Her sister, not knowing what to do, called 911. The cops arrested this obviously sick woman and brought her to jail, where she is awaiting General Sessions Court with a charge of assault. How sad is that? I'm working with mental health and my captain to try to push her through the system and find placement in a nursing home. I'm a correctional nurse, but often I find myself working behind the wall as a social worker or case manager. I do not blame these law enforcement officers that bring these individuals to jail. What I do blame is a society that has let these people down. There's a lack of available resources and safe housing facilities for these members of our communities that need our support. The easy solution seems to be arrest them and hide them from society behind steel block walls and razor wire. The Bible teaches us to comfort the feeble-minded and support the weak. Instead of focusing on foreign mission fields, and I'm not saying that foreign mission fields are a bad idea, I really wish that churches, organizations, and communities would focus on this neglected mission field right here in our own backyards. The needs are dire. What is the answer to this nationwide crisis? Where do we begin to make a change to better serve this group of people whose disease process and mental condition has become criminalized? I'm not a politician, a social worker, or a doctor. I'm just an insignificant small-town correctional nurse hoping and asking for a change. One thing that I've tried to do is offer educational training to the officers that I'm privileged to call co-workers about mental health and certain disease processes that may affect cognition and behaviors, which I hope helps in some small way. Some officers look at inmates all the same and fail to see the individual or try to understand the role that mental health plays in the lives of those that are called to serve. One positive resource we have is a statewide mobile mental health crisis team that will come to the scene when law enforcement are called. Members of this team will help with those of any mental health crisis. From the scene, this team can obtain a detention order from a judge and have the detainee committed to a psych hospital to receive the help that they need rather than being taken to county jails. Many of our own county deputies, city police officers, and highway patrolmen were unaware of this resource. I introduced the service to our local sheriff and his chief deputy. They have made it mandatory for their road officers to utilize this service. Soon I'll be introducing this resource to our city police officers. Outstanding. With education and awareness change to come, keep doing what you are doing. You are appreciated. We are in a mental health crisis in our country. I've been saying it for years. People like yourself are making a difference. I'm deeply sorry for the great loss of your precious son. You and your family are in my prayers. May you feel the comfort of God's presence in your darkest hours. I hope I do. My apologies for taking so much of your time. I will save my UFO encounter for another day. We're flying from Asheville, North Carolina to meet and greet conference in Golden, Colorado in January. Look forward to meeting you. I am looking forward to meeting you. That was an outstanding letter. One of the best in a long time. Thanks for writing. Now, this crisis team that this person talked about, every county should have it. What a lot of people don't know is many universities have these crisis teams on site right now. And if they don't, what they have is a group of police officers on the university campus that are specially trained in this. Why? Friends, it's It's because mental health is a huge crisis issue on campuses right now. A lot of parents don't know it. I'm telling you because I've seen it. When Ben was going to USC, I met 2 of these crisis officers. Outstanding individuals. USC has regular police officers, and they explained to me how overwhelmed they are. I think parents believe that the kids go to this campus and they're insulated from it. They're not insulated from it. It only gets worse. And then the university is left to deal with it. What is talked about right here is 100% true. When you're in the field as a police officer and you get a call that someone's irrational in a home, let's say, or somebody's irrational in a restaurant and they hit somebody, we have to get back out onto the street because there's greater priority calls waiting most of the time. But you got to quell the violence that's happening right then and there. The choice is you take them to jail. In most counties, they don't have a psych facility that has the ability to take people, in most instances. And if you take them to a psych facility, they can be out in an hour and back in that restaurant in 2 hours. Where in jail, they have to jump through a lot of hoops to get out. In most cities, not New York. But no easy answers. As I've stated hundreds of times, and I'll say it again, our country needs a giant paradigm shift. We need to make mental health the priority in our country. But I'm afraid to say that I think it's going further and further down the realm in priority. I don't see us making this an important issue. Drive around any major city in the western U.S. where it's warm, you'll be overwhelmed with the number of homeless people. Those homeless people have mental health issues, drug issues, alcohol issues. I can't tell you how bad it is. But the press isn't talking about them much. Next letter. First of all, thank you for that. You brought to light something that our whole world needs to see firsthand. Greetings from Chandler, Arizona. I'm a huge fan of your research and try to watch all your videos as you post them. Unfortunately, I missed you when you were here in Tempe during your premiere. I was in your town. Maybe next time. Anyways, I saw this video today and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Canada has completely lost their minds. It is about their MAID law, medical assist in dying. Not sure if you've heard of this, but recently they've updated their law to include mental illness as a viable reason for having the government help you kill yourself. And even worse, children are included now as well. Sickening. I've included a link to the video I saw this on, and as well as some web pages with some more information. So first of all, it's true. In fact, I first heard about this not too long ago when a veteran who had PTSD was counseled that it might be best to just kill yourself. What is going on in our world? What is happening? It's almost like they want to deplete our population. And they want people to kill themselves so the government doesn't have to deal with them. What about compassion, empathy, taking care of the sick and injured, rehabilitation, getting them back into the realm of where they need to be? Friends, just because a group of people don't see this as important doesn't mean you're not important. It doesn't mean that you can't be rehabilitated. The people that are thinking that way, they are the sick ones. Not you, not me. They are sick. And that's part of the evil in our world that we have to overcome as a group. And there is a lot of evil out there right now, friends. I won't get going on that. Next letter. Hey Dave, I'm 71 years young. Oh, that's young. Yeah. I love your work and never miss a video on missing people and missing hikers. And that's the problem. I've been thinking about a bucket list, and lately I've realized that If I went to any national parks, I could only go with a tour group. Your discovery of the number of missing people in the woods is frightening. I've been in the woods before in my life, and like most people who disappear, I was never aware of the danger, whether it be from bears or strange interdimensional beings. But I'm aware now, so even though I'm creating my own kick the bucket list, I would prefer not to kick the bucket in the forest. I know you carry a gun and have bear spray, and maybe you have a parallel dimension radiation detector. I don't have one of those. Where do I get it? Tell me. But I don't own a gun or a can of bear spray, but even if I did, I would be very uncomfortable being alone in the forest after hearing what Dave's research has uncovered, although I do intend to visit the Montana Vortex. So Dave, keep up the great work and know that I won't be one of your missing 411 stories, but I will continue to support you. I will buy your movie, and I will be waiting patiently to see if you ever figure out who or what has taken all the missing people. So I got a big shock for you who just wrote that letter. You don't have to be in the forest to disappear. Now, I know thousands of you have read Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence. Yes, in that book, the people disappeared from a downtown area, most of them. That's right, a downtown area. Sometimes right in the middle of a group of people. Well, Dave, how can that be? Well, it's true. And not only did they disappear in a group of people, nobody saw them disappear. Nobody saw them leave the building. How can that be? My point exactly. You don't have to be in the woods. This can happen anywhere. Next letter. Hope this email finds you well. I've written to you before on the Casey Hathaway case, and you were kind enough to respond. Thank you. I just got done watching your latest video on missing persons. I live in the eastern coastal area of North Carolina. I've taken up the hobby of tracking some of these mysterious events when it comes to missing persons in our parks, hairy men sightings, etc. I've noticed recently that 2 different missing persons cases that while they were frequently in the press at the beginning, no resolution was ever covered on cause of death, or the outcome of the 2 missing female hikers this past summer in Cherokee National Forest. I did see one headline that stated Bryce was a possible bear attack, but no official statements. Have you by chance heard anything? Nope. I can't figure out why I'm just missing the news reports or if the stories have been just dropped from the press. That's what it is. There seems to be more and more events out there that are covered widely at first and then just disappear without a conclusion or follow-up. I don't want to read much into it, but thanks for your good work. How I got into this was a couple of rangers at a national park knew exactly what that states. Is that for the first 7 to 10 days, there's a lot of press, there's a lot of information, etc. And then after that, there's almost nothing. Why? That's a good question. Sometimes I have written emails to the reporter that I see who wrote about a case. And I ask him to do a follow-up, or I ask him, hey, is there anything else that you know about this? I'm trying to push him to be an investigative reporter. Friends, there are very few investigative reporters nowadays, and most of them don't care at all. They don't care if the story they write is true, deep, intense, or if they even have any relative portion of the truth in their articles. It's sickening. Just saying. Don't get me going. Next letter. Hey Dave, I just listened to your video November 30th of the hunter who got off his horse to shoot an elk. Believing he hit the animal, he then tied up his horse and went to look for it on foot along with his hunting buddies, who I think were still on their horses. I'm curious why these people tie up and leave their horses and then walk 1 or 2 miles in a search for their shot elk. In another report, the guy tied up his horse and went on a walk about, and because it got dark, walked back to camp and his buddies, leaving his horse out there overnight. He then got up early to go retrieve the horse and disappeared. To me, it makes more sense that you take your horse with you, whether walking or leading or riding the animal. Horses are kind of like dogs. They have senses humans do not have and will alert to things you don't know. 100% true. Horses have that dimension to them like dogs, and they can save your life. To me, it makes more sense that you take your horse with you, whether walking or leading or riding the animal. Yep. Horses are kind of like dogs. They have senses humans don't have and will alert. Plus, once you locate the dead elk, you'll be carrying the carcass out on your horse after gutting it. And all the tools you need are in the saddlebags, I assume. Bingo. And in the case of the lost cow, how will you rope it and tie it to your saddle horn? Plus, if you get lost and are out there at night, temps drop, sharing body heat with the horse, just as with dogs, could be the difference between life and death. 100% true. It just does not make sense why anyone would tie up their horse and walk away on foot for miles in search of shot hunted animals or lost cows. Please explain to me why these people do such irrational behavior. I wish I could. I've thought the same exact things you just said. So you walk a mile without your horse, you find the elk that's down, okay? And now you want to field dress it, okay? And all the tools are on the horse. Now you got to walk back, get the horse, bring the horse back, hope that a bear doesn't attack your downed animal. And then you also have to be careful when you're walking back to that downed animal that a bear isn't watching it and ready to attack you. Just me. I would be very cautious. And also, when you're on a horse, you have a lot higher perch to see what's going on around you. I don't get it. Good points, though. Next letter. Hey, Mr. P. It's been on my conscience to apprise you / the village of an experience a coworker and myself had on a lonely stretch of highway just before dusk in the spring of '99. We were traveling back from Dallas from Piedras Negras, Mexico, on a work trip in a '92 two-door Jeep Cherokee. My window was quarter of the way down. We saw a flash on the horizon due south of us. And I immediately made a remark similar to, looks like a storm's brewing. After that utterance, I had precisely enough time to manually roll the window up before we realized we were underneath a big black triangle. Yikes. Picture being inside of a red laser beam that shines through the roof of the vehicle you are in, and as God and Billy as my witnesses, we began to feel gravity slipping away, and pardon me for the crudeness, but this is what happened. And I don't mean to belittle Billy, not at all. I felt my Frank lifting off my beans, a peculiar feeling, zero gravity and no bull. Billy jumped out the driver's seat into my lap, and exactly like Scooby-Doo would jump into Shaggy's arms, we looked at each other and screamed in absolute terror. We were back in our respective seats, continuing along our route at speed as if nothing happened. We had a conversation about it. Soon we were upon a convenience store. I insisted we tell someone. Billy wouldn't come with me inside. I just barged in and blurted out that I have just told you to the clerk and a couple inside the store. After I said my piece, the couple told me that 2 weeks ago, while their kids were driving the opposite direction, coming from a school dance at precisely the same location 3 miles west of Post, Texas, the same had happened to them, and the couple looked more freaked out than I was. One thing that I want to say is that in my heart of hearts, I believe that there was a device that could control gravity, somehow, or slow the speed of light down, or some such thing. And I'll go to my grave believing that it is likely that of a distance that even though the craft appears to be making a right-angle turn at 7 kilometers an hour, if you are aboard the craft, perceptible time for you stays the same. But relative to the outside world, you're in turbo mode, like sitting around a coffee table sipping a cup and experiencing less G-force than you feel on the cruise ship as it turns. I suppose if I could have been E.T., doubt it, but I just can't know. My gut says there was someone on that craft that was capable of taking offense at my silver tongue. I have a knack for pulling things out of nowhere and getting under your skin. When I feel particularly righteous and indignant, that is my hunch, only a gut though. I was 18 then, I'm 41 now, and I often wonder, experience time dilation. So did Billy. I saw time slow down. It was as if one could slowly count to 20 in the time it would take for a lizard to snatch a bug with its tongue. Leads me to wonder if there aren't recruits agreeing to work these craft as young men on a 4-year enlistment, our time. How much actual time they might experience in the span of that 4-year enlistment. Are they still young men after 4 years, living time and space at that finer resolution? Good question. The other thing I'm left with is a vivid memory of being stripped of all my dignity. I think the experience may have contributed to my personality and character somehow, and I'd give just about anything to talk again about that event with Billy, whom I lost touch with shortly after this happened. I'd be happy to sign an affidavit. I swear on my testicles, on my eternal soul, on everything I ever have or ever will love, that this is a factual account of actual events experienced by myself and a coworker. If I'm lying, may I spend eternity in desolation. May I be forgotten by Jehovah. May I suffer an eternity in agony and torment. Take it to the bank. This happened. And definitely Billy, myself, and 2 kids whose parents I met at the convenience store are not the only ones to have crossed paths with whatever it is. Speak up, please. God bless. God bless the village. Thank you for your time. P.S. I have great respect for you. Please keep reminding folks to do good and show love to someone who was hurt. Amen. That was an interesting note. Thank you. Hey Dave, my partner Steve and I had a strange UFO encounter several years ago while hunting for old tools on a mostly dry riverbed. It was a sunny summer day with literally not a cloud in the sky. My childhood home was less than a half mile away. I have spent an obsessive amount of time on this river from my earliest memories. I'm in my 50s now, and rock hounding is a passion. That day we had gradually separated, and Steve was about 100 yards upstream from me. That's bad. I became aware of a deep droning noise coming from the sky. It got incredibly loud and was concentrated in the sky over my head. There was absolutely nothing visible in the sky anywhere. The force of the noise was massive. I could feel it in my lungs, almost like a huge helicopter was hovering over me. I looked towards Steve, and he was running towards me and looking up also. It's very rocky terrain, so he was stumbling more than running. It felt like something was about to land, and all I could think to do was lay down, so I did. There was no wind, no heat, but it sounded like something about the size of a house was idling in the air above me. Steve continued to get closer, but we couldn't communicate because it was so loud. Whatever it was didn't land and instead started to move off slowly. The entire encounter lasted less than 5 minutes before it moved out of earshot. It worked its way just above the treetops up along a power line corridor through the woods. Steve and I went over the details many times looking for another rational explanation. It was a low-flying craft, invisible, somehow cloaked. It had the ability to hover with what sounds like afterburners. The noise was loud but smooth, definitely not rotor blades. The encounter sparked a new interest in the paranormal for Steve, and I, on the other hand, have had other paranormal experiences in my life, and have also followed your work for years. Steve passed on shortly before Ben. The shock of your loss affected me deeply. Watching your videos during that awful time helped me so much. I cannot fathom the courage it must have taken to express your grief publicly. Thank you. Expressing my grief publicly. I didn't care. What I meant by that? Ben's death shook my soul. I really didn't care what anybody thought. I was being truthful. I wasn't hiding anything. I wasn't trying to put on a perception that I wanted somebody to think. I didn't care. One thing I did care about is I cared about the people out there, the good souls that were having mental illness issues, that were thinking about taking their lives. I wanted them to think hard about the impact of them moving on would have on their family. It'll be something that family will never shake for a lifetime. Ever. It'll be a memory that will haunt that family. It's haunted me. So when you get in a very depressive state, remember, it may be really cloudy in your room, You may not have answers. You may look outside and the clouds are thick. But you know what? Right up above those clouds, there's a bright blue sky and a big shiny sun. And that sun's going to come up tomorrow. And tomorrow is a new day and a new chance for you. And if you're in that lowest point, it can only get better. And if you need help pulling out of it, please look up NAMI, N-A-M-I. Take an online course. I promise you it will help. If you don't want to take an online course, go down to their offices and sign up for a class just like I did. It's a big deal to me. Okay. Let's get on to the missing people cases. This first case, a man named Colin Campbell, 31 years old, went missing on November 28, 1995 in West Virginia. He was a pilot for a company called Casey Industries out of Albany, Oregon. The company had a construction project in West Virginia for the Weyerhaeuser Corporation. And Colin was in West Virginia on an extended basis, being their chief pilot. Everybody said Colin was really well liked and was described as being the ultimate safety pilot. And he had super credentials for being only 31 years old. He had an air transport certification for single and multi-engine planes and instrument rating. He was a flight instructor at that young age, and he had a cert for single and multi-engine planes to teach in. His last medical certification was July 14th of 95, the same year. And he had close to 5,000 hours of flight time. That's a lot for being 31. So on November 28th, 1995 at 9 a.m. at Braxton County Airport in West Virginia, Colin got into the company's Cessna 414, a twin-engine plane, and he was going to pick up and do a business transport from Lynchburg, West Virginia. He'd already been up early that day, flown 2 segments of a flight. His next trip from Braxton County went across the Appalachian Mountains to Raleigh-Durham International Airport, and then transport to Sutton, then back to Lynchburg. And at 9:30 a.m., the 414, with 3,378 airframe hours, took off from Braxton County Airport. So, here we go. This is Washington, D.C. This is Braxton County, West Virginia. He leaves and he's flying kind of southwest. Look at this map. The trip distance was 107 nautical miles, about 35 minutes, cruising at about 230 miles an hour. Took off at 9:30 a.m. At 9:32, Colin radioed Clarksburg Air Traffic Control, said he had just taken off and requested an IFR flight. That's Instrument Flight Rule. And he was told that his clearance is on request. At 9:33, Air Traffic Control still couldn't find his flight plan and was hesitating on approving him for IFR. At 9:34, Colin said he had trouble hearing Air Traffic Control in their communications and requested a direct path to Lynchburg at 7,000 feet. At 9:34, Air Traffic Control responded and said they still hadn't found the flight plan. A minute later, Colin told them that he was going to switch over to Washington Air Traffic Control for IFR approval. At 9:36, he again reported trouble hearing Washington. Washington said he was barely readable. At 9:38, Air Traffic Control asked Colin for his altitude. No response. That's at 9:38. 9:39 asked the same question. At 9:41, various controllers at various air traffic control centers kept trying to raise Colin. He'd been in the air for 8 minutes. No other contact. Weather in the area was not, the ceiling was 900 feet and it was foggy. Visibility 5 miles. He never arrived at Lynchburg. On November 28th, the wheels started to turn and they started to do a search for Colin. Last radar fix was at 9:36 a.m. Webster County Emergency Services activated ground search plus 2 helos. We're doing a 60 square mile area. 60 square miles would have been just about 10 miles south and about 6 miles wide. So they lose contact with him 8 minutes into the air. So they figure that he can only travel maybe 10 miles, maybe 16 miles south. So they were focusing in this area. This is important, folks. Important. Radio problems. Difficult time getting IFR clearance. Well, the ground search had 100 people. They weren't finding anything. There were never any reports about a low-flying plane, and nobody reported hearing a crash. And there was no fire. Hundreds of Colin's assistants, or Colin's employees, left their job because they were building a plant for Weyerhaeuser, and they all searched. There was a 7 to 10 day search, depending on if it was formal and informal. They found nothing. Now, the Webster County coroner, a man named John Reed, took a personal interest in Colin's disappearance. He was a pilot. And he started to fly grid patterns around this area. And he flew the area where he thought that Colin may be. He flew it 25 times, never finding anything. Finally, he's flying with a friend named Dwayne McCourt, and they saw something that they'd never seen before. They found something white in a tree. They told emergency services, and they gave them the GPS coordinates. And the following week, ground team hiked 3 miles into the site, where they found the Cessna 414 destroyed, completely destroyed. The quote by the search and rescue is, "I doubt any human walked this area ever." Now, the plane entered the tree line, they reported, at a 38-degree angle. Now, 90 degrees would be straight up. 45 degrees would be half of that. 38 was a little less. They determined that all of the engines on the plane were fully functional when it impacted. The area had been searched multiple times in the past, and Colin was not found. The plane wasn't found during those previous searches. Now, the coroner went in along with the search team, and they searched that area for days. They never found Colin. If the plane was destroyed, then it's logical to say there's no way he got out of that plane alive. So why wasn't he found? Makes no sense. They said that they found some clothing, but they weren't sure if it was clothing that happened to be in the plane or clothing that Colin was wearing. But they never found any positive sign of death, never found any bones, nothing. That is odd, to say the least. I really don't know what to say about this case, except that Pilot Knob area has had a lot of unusual things happen to it. Now remember, Colin lost radio contact 8 minutes into the flight. Pilot Pilot Knob is 107 miles southwest of where he disappeared. So the theory is he had to have kept flying after he lost radio contact. He didn't lose radio contact because he crashed. So why wasn't his body found? Why wasn't the plane found? The coroner had flown the area multiple times in the past, never saw anything. It just doesn't make any sense. I've researched hundreds of airplane crashes. Very rare ultra rare that the body isn't found with the plane. Now, sometimes there's a soft landing. You get real thick treetops, and a plane sometimes can just land in the trees. And if that's the case, then you can survive and you can get out. Just recently, a plane crashed into one of those big, huge electrical towers. And the plane was sitting up there on the high-tension electrical lines. And some of the people got injured a little, but they stayed in the plane. Smart. They didn't get out. And they waited for everybody to turn down the electricity, turn it off, and then emergency services got the pilot and the passenger out. So, yeah, this can happen. Colin Campbell. I wish I knew what happened to him. November 28th, 95, West Virginia. Now, strange things happening in the air. The next two cases I've talked to you about before, but this is to connect the dots, and we're going to talk about him again. Frederick Valentich, 20 years old, missing October 21st, 78, the Bass Strait in Australia. The Bass Strait. This is Melbourne, the mainland of Australia, the Bass Strait, Tasmania. Bass Strait has had a lot of strange things happen there over the years. So he was between the mainland and Tasmania. This is a very, very famous case. He's born June 9th, 58 in Melbourne, attending a private university. There were 4 kids in the Valentich family. He lived at home. He always loved airplanes from a young age. He took private pilot lessons. He even got a job working at an Army surplus store so he could afford to pay for more lessons and more time in a plane. He got his private pilot license on February 24th, 77. And he was working as an assistant in the store, studying to get his commercial license. He even joined the Australian Junior Air Training Corps. By October 21st, 78, he had accumulated 150 flight hours. That was very admirable. He drove to Moorabbin Airport, rented a Cessna 182L, which he had done many times in the past. He filed a flight plan to King Island via the Bass Strait by way of Otway, Cape Otway. And he was flying to gain hours and pleasure. He left Moorabbin at about 6:06 p.m. It was a very clear day, great day to fly. The cruising speed of the plane about 160 miles an hour. At 7:06 p.m., or just an hour into the flight, Frederick contacts Melbourne Flight Services. And he's concerned because he sees something in the sky. And what transpires is a 6-minute conversation about what he sees. And it was a recorded conversation between he and air traffic control. And he's dumbfounded. He thinks he sees something that was super bright lights flying around him. He asks if there's other traffic in the area. They say no. He asks what it is. They don't know. The air traffic controllers say that they hear a loud metal type clacking as he's talking. They're not sure what that was. And he says, this thing is really close to me and it's making me nervous. And engine starts to sputter, and all of a sudden they lose all contact with Frederick. Well, the Australian Special Services put out 2 P-3 Orions, and they spent 7 days flying grid patterns looking for an oil slick, gas slick, or wreckage in the Bass Strait. A few days later, on November 1st, Frederick's father said that he's convinced his son was abducted by aliens. Air traffic control confirmed to the press that they had heard metallic sounds and engine interruptions. And there had been engine interruptions around UFOs by people reporting in cars. Air traffic control said there were no known planes in that area. And authorities stated that Frederick saw something he couldn't identify. This happened in 1978. Nothing has ever been found. Think about that, friends. You got a pilot reporting a fantastical event. Engine interruption, metallic sounds, no planes in the area. What do you make of that? What can you make of that? Now, in the first incident, remember, they lost radio contact with the pilot. And it's guaranteed that that pilot didn't lose radio contact and just crash, because he flew on over 100 miles. Or something took him along for 100 miles. Now, the next case. I've talked about it before. Norman Gibbs, 55 years old. He went missing Christmas Eve, 1975. The island of Mull in Scotland. So, the island of Mull, right here. Glasgow, Belfast, the Isle of Man. Water everywhere in here. You got the feeling. Very much like the Bass Strait. Water everywhere. Well, Norman Gibbs, 55 years old, was a war hero, an intellect, a pilot. He flew Spitfires during the Battle of Britain, and he was a past leader of the BBC Scottish Orchestra. He was brilliant. He led a fascinating life. Well, on Christmas Eve, he had made his way to the Glenforsa Hotel on the northeast side of the island of Mull. The island and the hotel had a grass strip right in front, no lights. Gibbs arrived at the hotel on December 20th, 1975. On December 23rd, he contacted the owner of a plane that happened to be parked there at the airport, a man named Ian Hamilton, owner. Ian was a lawyer who owned the Cessna 150, and he agreed on a rental price so Norman could fly it. The plane's registration number was G as in George, AVT, N as in Nora. A little bit about a Cessna 150. When I was younger, my dad had a plane, and he wanted me to learn to fly. So I spent about 20 hours flying. I spent a lot of time in a 150. Cessna 150 is a 2-passenger plane, wings on top. Not a lot of power, but a very, very dependable plane. I think if you put me in it, I could probably fly it right now. But on December 24, 75, at about 9:30 p.m., Gibbs walked out of the Glenforsa Hotel and onto the airfield with a hotel guest named Ms. Felicity Granger. Now, Felicity thought, she said at the time, that she was going to go on a plane ride with Mr. Gibbs. But when they get onto the field, he tells her that he wants her to set out a series of torches and park a car at the end of the field with the headlights on so he could land at night. She said she was a little astounded, but said, yeah, he's a nice guy, so I'll do it for him. And she said, and the other people said, he took off very smoothly, very safely over the Sound of Mull, where everybody lost sight of him, as he should have been, as he disappeared behind some mountains. Well, he didn't return. And the hotel called the police, and needless to say, there was a huge search. One of the things that was stated was that night, over an area where he disappeared, on the water, the ocean, there was a bright light of something in the water. That's what it was described. And they said that they didn't think it was a fishing boat, but they weren't sure. And it was there just as he took off, and they described it as odd. Now, the weather was really nice that night, but a huge island search by the sheep herders and the shepherds on the island, who covered every inch of ground, and fishing boats out in the water, they didn't find anything. Now, 4 months after he disappears, in April, a man named Donald McKinnon, who was an initial searcher for him, found his body on a grassy knoll, which had been searched multiple times by McKinnon. Called the coroner, he came out, and there was only a small scratch on the chin. No broken bones on the body. And there was a theory that some put out that said, well, he must have been flying along and jumped out of the plane at low altitude. Except there were no broken bones. There was no scratches. There was no tears in his clothing. It was odd. The coroner later stated that he believed the cause of death may have been exposure. Exposure. It's an island. Why didn't he just walk back to the hotel or walk back to any of the numerous hundreds of residences on the island? It was odd. And then McKinnon even said it was odd that he searched that location where the body was found and never found it. Another opinion was that the plane crashed on water and Gibbs swam to shore and died on shore from exposure because his clothing was wet. I guess that's possible. Except the coroner was smart. They took all the clothing and they took swabs of the skin, and there was no salt water that was on the clothing or on the skin. So that's out. On September 12, 1986, almost 11 years after Gibbs disappeared, his plane is found in 80 feet of water. And this was an odd thing. It had damage as though the wings had come off, like a high impact collision with the water. How did the plane get there? Where was Gibbs for 4 months? If the sheep herder didn't find him and he all of a sudden shows up, that's odd. No broken bones, that's odd. Why die of exposure and just lay there? Why wouldn't he get up and find help? That's odd. Another case where a plane disappears, nobody sees or hears anything, and suddenly a body shows up 4 months later. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, why did I throw these 3 cases at you? Because I think that you need to pay attention to this. Now, Valentich in the Bass Strait is the only person who reported seeing a UFO in conjunction with his disappearance. In the Gibbs case, they saw an unidentified submerged object in the water with a bright light. Remember that. But nobody could ever make the connection that the light was related to the disappearance, although they hadn't seen the light before and they identified it as suspicious. In the Campbell case, what happened to his body? Where'd he go? Why wasn't he found? So you have 3 men. One is 31, one is 55, and one is 20. I classify these as highly suspicious, folks. We may never know what happened to these men, but I can tell you what, none of it makes sense to me. So if you do me a favor and post this on your social media so everyone can get an education as to really what the truth is about these cases. Now, I've made a post about Gibbs and Valentich before, but when you put all three of these cases together, I want you to have more clarity that these are unusual, but they do happen. So when you go out today, you go to the store, you go to the post office, look for that somebody that needs some help. Person who may be old, disabled, give them some help. Be a good person. Give of yourself. It doesn't hurt. You'll feel better about life if you do this. It's not a sign of weakness to help somebody. I appreciate you being here. We're entering the holiday seasons. And whatever holiday you're going to celebrate, I hope it's joyous. But if you're having a holiday and you're alone, know that you're around, and we're all around people that care about us. Maybe they're not sitting next to us, but remember they're thinking about us. I appreciate each one of you greatly. You can follow me on Twitter, David Paulides, the Can I'm Missing. Also follow me on Truth Social. You can get my books, get the poster at NA, like North America, BigfootSearch.com. Do not buy my books online. You'll pay through the nose. Only buy my books through the store, $24.99 a piece. And you can pre-order the DVD or pre-order the movie online if you want. And I'll be on the link right under this. And it'll be the first comment on this video. Or you can pre-order the DVD and Blu Ray through me, and the link is first comment on this video. So have a great week. You are appreciated. Paulides out.